This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, a very special edition. Easy Meat inside Britain's grooming gang scandal. Our very special guest this evening, Gavin Boby, the founder of the Law and Freedom Foundation. Gavin, welcome back to the Glazov Gang.
Hello, Jamie. Great to see you again.
We did a two-part series in the recent past on Muslim rape gangs in the United Kingdom and the cover-up, all the atrocious, frightening, horrendous details and ingredients of the case. And now your group has published a new version of the book, Easy Meat, written by Peter McLaughlin. Tell us about this new edition of this book that deals with the Islamic child rape gangs.
Yes, it's updated. It's in hard copy. You can get it on Amazon. It's meticulously researched. It's beautifully written by Peter McLaughlin, a little forward by me. It's the definitive reference work on these grooming gangs, and it's only getting worse as time goes on. The story is only getting worse as time goes on. But you can get it in hard copy on Amazon.
Thank you very much, Gavin. Well, look, you know, in the book it shows social workers, police officers, Muslim groups, journalists, members of parliament, all knew about these grooming gangs, these rape gangs, for decades, and they turned a blind eye. This is just, what do we say about it, Gavin?
Well, yes, it was political correctness that made people refuse to recognize this problem. It appears to have been going on since the 1980s. Initially, it was Sikh girls getting targeted, the early mid-1980s Sikh girls being targeted, and then the Muslim rape gangs moved on to white indigenous British girls, and the authorities would not look at it. They sent out memo after memo, and all these local authorities saying, you mustn't mention who's doing it, you mustn't mention ethnicity, you mustn't mention that it's the taxi trade that's heavily involved in it, because that primarily means Muslim men. And that has gone on for decades, and now they can't hide it anymore. What they're trying to do is to say that it's restricted to certain towns, particularly one town called Rotherham. And I think they're going to continue to try that, but that won't hold water. It's a nationwide problem, very widespread, very dangerous.
Gavin, you know, it's just surreal. In the book, and also, you know, your discussions throughout, you know, time as we're covering this issue, am I correct that while Peter McLaughlin and your researchers are getting the evidence simultaneously as time is going on is vanishing?
Yes, I would say so. These cases are very difficult to bring to court. It's very difficult to get these young girls, 12 or 13, who are pimped out, may not even realize at the time that what they're doing is wrong. And when they do, are deeply ashamed of what has happened and may blame themselves. It's very difficult to get the evidence from them. It's very difficult to get them to go to court. And the longer a case doesn't go to court, the harder it gets eventually to bring it to court. So yes, you're right.
But what I'm also referring to is that there is a cover-up, and now there's a cover-up of the cover-up.
Oh, I'm sure we'll be seeing that. It's difficult to know how far local authorities, who are primarily responsible, and the police as well, are covering up the cover-up. But it's certainly becoming evident that there was a cover-up. I think what you may be referring to is what the authorities are doing, which is issuing reports into specific local authorities in an attempt to say this isn't a nationwide problem, it isn't a Muslim thing, it's just a few Pakistanis in some areas who are doing it, and we've got a grip on it. That's the lie that is currently being put about.
Thank you, Gavin. And look, because of this book, Easy Meat Inside Britain's Grooming Gang Scandal, everybody get it. It's all documented now. And so here's the thing. Everything is documented now, Gavin. So how can a police officer, how can a child protection worker, how can a member of parliament now say, we didn't know?
Thank you. That's why we wrote it. That's why we've got it in hard copy up on Amazon, so that nobody can say we didn't know. And what we're hoping, what I would like to ask is if there is any child protection worker, any police officer watching this who wants to do their job and doesn't simply want to get kicked about and shoved about by their politically correct authorities, mouthing politically correct nonsense, that they should read the book, because it is a definitive reference work. It will let them know what the problem is, how it operates, who's doing it, the signs to look for, how the authorities, the people above you, will react. And if you are in that trade, if you are a child protection officer, you need to arm yourself with the knowledge, because one day your boss or your boss's boss is going to change his tune, because he'll be in trouble and he'll look for someone to blame, and that person will be you. So arm yourself with knowledge ahead of that in order to be able to do your job properly and protect these girls. It's what your duty is, it's what you're paid to do. Find out about it and then do your job.
Well, Gavin, and here's the thing that the apologists, the ones that practice denial, constantly say, oh, well, Muslim men aren't the only people who rape people. I mean, these people rape over here too, and, white people rape. We know that. Sin and crime is universal. This is a given. But the fact that something happened somewhere else, perpetrated by someone else, does not excuse or should blind us to a certain group that is committing mass crimes, and we should pay attention to the ideology that inspires and sanctions their behavior. So, let us begin with this. Let's go back here for a minute. Tell us why the book is called Easy Meat, and tell us about these Muslim men, who many of whom are actually praying throughout the day. They're very pious and devout Muslims, and because of that, because of what Islam teaches them that they are permitted to do and should do to the Kufr white girls, what they end up doing at night. Tell us about this.
Yes. First of all, it's called Easy Meat because that was a phrase used by a former British Home Secretary, effectively when he was trying to acknowledge, but also excuse what these Muslim men were doing. He was saying it's Pakistanis behaving like any other young man because they've got too much testosterone. No, that emphatically is not the case. Unfortunately, this is a crime that is almost exclusively confined to Muslim men, not Pakistani men, but Muslim men within Britain. It's what's called localized grooming, and that word localized is the key. Non-Muslim, white, indigenous British men, if they want to go and engage in child abuse, they will tend to have to go online where it's anonymous because it's disapproved of. Because if I said to you, hey Jamie, let's go and see if we can go and abuse a child together, you'd report me to the police immediately. It's frowned upon. But in Muslim circles, it is not. And therefore, what you see amongst Muslim men in Britain is brothers, cousins, uncles, colleagues, friends, neighbours getting together and then going out to have an evening, finding young girls between the ages of 12 or 13 and 16. By the time they're 16, they've gone to seed as far as these men are concerned. They usually like them about 12 or 13. And that's what they're doing together. And it is Muslim men doing it.
And let me interrupt for 1 second. This is crucial here. This is what the left cannot accept, that there is a difference among groups and cultures, period. And this is what the left cannot digest and denies. But here's the thing. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, in our Western civilization, we have sin that is committed. We have crimes that are committed. But child abuse is frowned upon, repudiated, and punished. But in the Muslim culture and religion, because of the Islamic texts, it is justified, it is sanctioned that the Kufr girls can be taken as sex slaves and raped. And this is a problem.
Yes, absolutely. Very much so. What the stats, the figures reveal is that a Muslim man is between 150 and 200 times likelier than a non-Muslim man to commit this crime. So what that means is if you have one Muslim man in front of you and 150 non-Muslim men in front of you and you don't know who's committed this crime, arrest the Muslim man because he's the one who's likely to have done it. It is as severe as that for the reasons that you say. And there's a section in the book that goes through the background of Islamic doctrine, how it's permissible to have sex with children, how sex is and rape These are weapons of war against the unbeliever. That's a civilizational crime. That is, in fact, a genocidal crime as defined by the UN Convention on Genocide. Now, I have given a talk about that, but basically, under the UN Genocide Convention, if you act with the motive of destroying or replacing or getting rid of a certain group, i.e. the non-Muslim, and then you do certain things like taking children away from their families or reducing childbirths within that group, that counts as a genocidal crime, punishable as genocide. It is as serious as that. It is a civilizational crime motivated by Islamic doctrine, and that is why this particular crime is seen pretty much exclusively amongst Muslims. In Britain, it's Somalis and Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Afghans. Abroad in Germany or France, it will be North Africans, Algerians or Moroccans. Muslim men.
Thank you, Gavin. And what we need to stress is that the left, in its denial, always slandering wonderful people like you, human rights activists, who are trying to protect the victims of Islamic supremacism and all of its crimes. And what we need to stress here is that the left engages in this. It says, oh, well, you're trying to stigmatize all Muslim people. You're spreading hate against all Muslims. This is a lie. It is a given that not all Muslims do anything, just like not all people do everything. The key is that there is Islamic doctrine, and Easy Me documents all of these texts in Islamic theology. I also recommend to all of our viewers to get Robert Spencer's work, who documents all of the Islamic teachings on child rape and on sexual slavery, etc. But Gavin, what we constantly need to be stressing is that we're not spreading hate against Muslim people. We're not saying that all Muslims do this. What we're saying is there are Islamic teachings that justify this, and the danger is there are many devout, pious Muslims, in this case Muslim men, who carry those teachings out.
Yes, absolutely. And like you, I'd recommend people to read Robert Spencer's dissection of Islamic doctrine, particularly on issues like this. He's very good on dissecting Islamic doctrine. I have to take issue with you on one point. The idea that not all Muslims or not all Muslim men are doing this. Well, I think we can say that Muslim women aren't doing this. We can say that Muslim babies aren't doing this. We can say that Muslim pensioners are not doing this, but the statistics, the data is really worrying on this. I'd like to go through some figures with you because it makes it leads you to some very uncomfortable conclusions. Now, the current town in Britain that we know about, because it's been researched, it's had an inquiry into it, is called Rotherham. And what they have found, the recent inquiry into Rotherham, found that over the past dozen years or so, 1,400 girls were victims of these rape gangs. Now that town has about 86,000 people in it, but the entire borough, the district under that council, which is I think what was being talked about, has 250,000. So let's take the higher figure of 250,000. Now the UK has 64 million people. So if there are 250,000 in that borough, then if you multiply 64 by 4, you come up with 250. Now, if you take the figure of 1,400 victims and you multiply that by 250, you come up with 350,000 victims. And Rotherham is substantially less Muslim, less Islamized than the average throughout the UK. The average throughout the UK is 5%. Rotherham is about 3 to 3.5%. So it's substantially less. You should have fewer instances of this crime in Rotherham than nationwide. But just think for a moment, if you have 350,000 victims, possibly more than that, somewhere between that and 500,000 victims throughout the UK. Now, the number of Muslims in the UK is said to be about 3 million. Now, if you take the rape-aged Muslim males, there'll be males between about 18 and 43. 17 and 43. That is 1/3 of the male Muslim population, or 1/6 of the total Muslim population. 1/6 of 3 million is 500,000. Now, what that looks like is you have 350 to 500,000 victims on the one hand, and you have about 500,000 rape-aged Muslim males in the UK. And the question that I'd ask you, just a quick question, yes or no, Jamie, if you have a prostitute and you have a client, who is likely to have more sexual partners, the prostitute or the prostitute's client? Well, I can answer that for you. It is the prostitute. She's going to have more clients. So the chances are that, what the data suggests is that the majority of British Muslim men of rape age are committing this crime. That is disgusting, and it needs to be looked at in much greater detail.
Absolutely, Gavin, and thank you for sharing this frightening information, information that is documented. Your book, Easy Meat, shows the empirical reality of this. I just want to crystallize exactly my point and what I'm saying here, and it's so important that you brought that up. My point in general is that what the left does is, for some reason, it's constantly playing with this charade of whether it's all or how many, etc. And all I'm saying is that this is a lie, and it's deceptive, because look, we all know many people. It depends what we even mean by Muslim. There are many people, many men that are born in the Muslim world. They were not given a choice whether they wanted to be Muslim or not. They live secular lives. They live peaceful lives. I know many of them. But the fact that they do not engage in this behavior has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that many Muslim men who do become devout, are pious, do follow Islamic doctrine, do behave in it, in such behavior. And what you're saying now is that the numbers are very, very high, shockingly even suggesting that it is a majority of Muslim men in the UK. Am I correct in my understanding?
That's right. What the left won't do is to engage in reality, to address facts. They just want to deny at every stage. The figures reveal that it is suggest that it's the majority, possibly the overwhelming majority of British Muslim men of a certain age doing that. I suspect it may be a kind of bonding activity between Muslim men, the kind of bonding activity that goes on between bikers or football hooligans or wise guys. And the numbers are very uncomfortable. It's not only the rapists themselves. There are other people implicated. There are the men running the kebab shops where the girls are first enticed and first groomed. There are the young Romeos who introduce them, first of all, the 17-year-olds who then introduce them to their older uncle. There are the taxi drivers who ferry them around town. There are the money men who launder the money. So there are a lot of people implicated. And when you have so many victims, it suggests that I can't see how it isn't the majority of rape-age Muslim males engaging in this. I don't like that, but that's the figures talking. If you're offended at that, if you hate that idea, it's the figures, the data that you hate. It's the data that's offending you, not me.
And also, here's the key issue. I mean, when I was, reading your material, reading Easy Meat, I mean, the documentation of what's happening to these poor girls, gasoline being thrown on them, their tongues being nailed to tables, just the abuse, the cruelty, all of this monstrous treatment of these young innocent girls. The question is, are you more concerned about being politically correct, or do you want to save thousands, tens of thousands, millions of these victims of rape gangs? And so this is when real humanitarianism comes out. Gavin, Boby, thank you so much for everything you're doing. Let's wrap up. What can be done?
People need to inform themselves primarily. Before people do anything, inform yourself. The authorities also need to get a grip on this crime in order to stamp it out aggressively with any legal means that they have, in order that it doesn't come to a head and explode at some stage. But at the moment, what we're hoping is that the people who work in this area and who have some conscience about their jobs will inform themselves and do their jobs properly. And we're hoping that the book will enable them to do that.
Thank you so much, Gavin, Boby. Very appreciated. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Jamie. It's a pleasure talking to you again.
Thank you. And our audience, go to Amazon.com and get Easy Meat, Inside Britain's Grooming Gang Scandal by Peter McLaughlin. Arm yourself with knowledge and start to participate. Get involved. Start fighting for human rights. Fight on behalf of children. And let us be honest about the texts in Islam that inspire and sanction this ugly violence. If you appreciate this show and like what we talk about, please remember we're a fan-generated show. If you can help us keep going, go to jamieglazov.com and support the Glazov Gang, and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel of the Glazov Gang. And we'll see you on our next episode. Good evening.